Well, today I'm reading from my book, Notes Never Sent, which was published by VIP Publishing a little over a month ago. And it's really surreal because it was 1 year ago that I was sending out query letters and book proposals to all these book publishers, thinking who's going to publish some college book. And VIP, they published inspirational books, inspirational stories, and they actually published this. And I've gotten back a lot of reviews on it, and the main criticism that I get is that it's 400 pages long, and that's too long. And that's been my problem since I was little. They would say, write 1 page, and I'd write 5 pages, because I like to write. But my rebuttal to their "it's too long" is that if you look at the print, it's very large print. And the reason for that is it's geared towards school-age children. It's a bestseller on the school-age children's book list, and school-age children like large print. I think we all like large print, but school-age children get away with liking it a little bit more. So I'm going to read some selections from this. It is a long book, but I'm going to read a few sections from it. And the first part is just kind of an intro to the book. Because the book is written in a few different forms. You have your stories, you have your letters, hence the title Notes Never Sent, and you have like prose forms like zujitsus. So this is just an introduction to why letters. Why do I use letters in the book? Extraordinary circumstances stamp the course of an otherwise ordinary life. A child fights cancer, a nun fights against discrimination, a drug addict volunteers for the community. An immigrant learns to speak English by reading the newspaper every day. Their inspirational stories live on in stories to encourage others. I've learned just as much about myself as from the stories around me as from my own experiences. Although I do have my own story to share. I was not supposed to be born. Food fertility specialists told my mother she could never have a child. How I'm alive today is a mystery. I'm the only person in the entire world with the name Morissa Schwartz. If it were Morissa Schwartz, there'd be dozens, maybe even hundreds of people with this name. But it's that one letter, that one O, that sets me apart. And everybody has something that sets him or her apart. For me, it's the O. Those who I write about have shown me that you never truly know a person until you let yourself get to know them. No one is shallow, they only appear that way when you view them from afar. I like to delve into what makes us each an individual and express that sentiment in letters to those who inspire me to write. To prepare for writing this, I hung many letters around my desk that I received over my lifetime from loved ones and friends. The simple act of reading an old letter, from the sweetness on that old stationery that a friend sent from camp, to the heartbreak from the sympathy card from my great-grandma, to the love of my mom's lunch note, can bring back so many emotions, and that is the power of a letter. Letters are an art form that include a raw emotion on a personal level from writer to recipient. We can express so much in the earnest stanza of a letter, from sentiment to story. And this is why I write, what encourages somebody to want to write. I mean, it takes a lot of effort to sit down and with a pen or a computer and write something. So what causes somebody to want to write a book or want to write a letter? Mine started here. Popcorn, 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 Dad shouted with his eyes in the colorful cardboard book. Airplane Jill, I responded. At this particular moment, Dad was reading one of my favorites to me, Airplane Jill, the story of an airplane that enters an air show. Dad had already read 2 books that evening and would most likely read about 3 more. He read to me every night for hours until I finally fell asleep. I had every book memorized but enjoyed hearing Dad's voice as he read the stories. He always made me laugh. Dad knew how I memorized the books. To challenge me, he began changing different parts of the stories to keep me engaged. Soon, instead of entering an air show, Airplane Jill began dancing or going to glamorous parties. I didn't realize at the time, but Dad was rewriting those stories. It was my first exposure to the writing process, and if Dad could write, I wanted to write too. And then, again, there were a lot of letters in this. So this next letter is a personal letter to my mother. However, it's really about somebody always being there for you. And we always have like a best friend figure, somebody who's always there for us. So in my case, it's my mother, and that's the beauty of this letter. I think that everybody can relate to it. Dear Mom, you've been my pen pal since before I could even write. I've saved the hundreds of letters that you've written to me and read them often, even though I talk to you every day. Reading your words is a separate experience from our everyday interactions. Your notes have the power to resonate with me at any age. Morissa, some people reach for the stars, you reach for the entire universe. I really love you and think you're an amazing lady. I'm proud to be your mama bird. You're my princess, my angel, my life. These are the words that make me smile no matter how many times I read them. You are an incredible lady who has done everything for me. My saying that has become cliche, but it's the truth. You're always there for me, whether you're making breakfast in bed early in the morning, texting me with advice in the afternoon, or talking about my days before bed. More than that, though, you are the one person who always listens to me. It amazes me every time you recall something I said in passing months ago. Little things like that remind me that you're my best friend always, because the big things are just too obvious. I always said I want to be like you, and who wouldn't? Your kindness amazes me. You taught me to see the good in people, especially those others would shun. When I was a child, and the other children wouldn't talk to Lenny because he had autism, you encouraged me to play with him, and he became one of my best friends. And when you invited friends without family over for the holidays and cooked for them, it just proved how genuine you are once again. Your many talents that range from artistic and culinary to social and intellectual are so impressive. You take care of your family like no one else, despite being a business owner who works 6 days a week. To top it all off, you're beautiful, and I'd be happy if I inherited a fraction of your fashion sense. You're the best role model that any girl could ever look up to, and everyone knows we have our own little world together. I'm thankful to have grown up with the best friend that I just happen to call Mom. You drive me to be a better person. That is why I write. And then this next section goes into friendship. So this is a letter that was written to a friend in grade school, and then that goes into a humorous story. Dear Lily, our kindergarten teacher used to pronounce your name as Leela, as if Lily is such an impossible name to pronounce. We always laughed about that, even though I found it more humorous than you. We were so similar to one another, which complicated the friendship. You were like my sister, and we were competitive about everything. We often argued about the most benign issues, most revolving around who was better at something or who would be the leader. Despite our bickering, we did have a lot of fun times together. We both loved to make up tales about mysterious characters like fairy princesses, spies, and teenagers. Our active imaginations allowed us to act those stories out. Those are some of my favorite memories. It hurt when you revealed that you were moving to India. I was so upset, and you acted like you couldn't care less. I guess it wasn't much of a shock to you since your family had been planning to move for a while, but it felt like you were abandoning me. I missed you so much, and we went 3 years without talking because we had no way of communicating. I figured that you had forgotten about me, but one random day in 6th grade, I answered the phone and heard your voice. We talked for hours as if you'd never moved away, and that is how I know that no matter what, you'll always be a friend in the same way that a sister is always a sister. Good friends are for life, and that is why I write. And this story is called Bowling Again, and it's really funny because you don't realize the things that impact your life. I'm a terrible bowler, really no interest in the sport, and so many life events have circled around bowling. We used to have daddy-daughter bowling days. I had bowling birthday parties. We would be bused to bowling alleys in grade school because that was our gym class. So this is one of those bowling events, just the weird things that make funny stories. In the summer of 1st grade, my town created a bowling league for grade schoolers. 2 of my best friends, Adele and Scarlett, joined with me. Our first task was to come up with a name for our team, which caused some controversy. Adele loved flowers and butterflies, so she wanted something whimsical, with her best idea being the leafy green longlegs. Scarlett suggested a tough name to show the other teams that we weren't messing around, so she suggested we call ourselves the Cannibals. I didn't even know what a cannibal was back then, and if I found out, I would have been petrified of Scarlett for coming up with such a creepy name. I thought our name should be patriotic and powerful. Ideally, we can name the team after a president, like Monroe or Polk. I was going through a phase where I was fascinated with presidential history, an admittedly strange obsession for a 7-year-old girl. After much debate, we finally settled on the USA Flowers, which none of us particularly loved, but we pretended it was the greatest thing since Crazy Horse. Then I decided that we had to come up with a theme song, so we wrote one. It started with the 3 of us shouting, "The USA Flowers," and clapping and chanting. The USA Flowers, and the chorus was comprised of USA, USA, and our big finale came when we stomped our feet and went, "The USA Flowers." Adele and Scarlett performed it with me for our friends at recess, who did not appear very impressed, but they were probably just jealous. The morning of our first day of bowling, we were fierce. My parents had pastel pink t-shirts with USA flowers and bold black letters printed up for us. Scarlett tied the bottom of hers so it looked like she had a tail. She thought she looked so cool. Adele followed suit, but I refused. T-shirts are not meant to be tied. They're supposed to be flowy and comfortable, I expressed. Neither girl listened. We practiced for an hour before our first game and had scores of 46, 62, and 39. We were so ready to cream the competition. It was game time. We put our hands over the little blower thing. What's that blower thing for anyway? Adele asked. I didn't know, so I said, Scar, this is no time for questions. It's game time. Now remember, focus, nail it. Oh, I love that commercial, Adele said, catching my reference to the new Trident gum commercial. Yeah, and then they go snowboarding. I love that one, Scarlett laughed. Oh, did you guys hear the new Chili's commercial? I asked. We all began to croon the Chili's Baby Back Rib song. And that was our downfall. When the actual game started, our objective switched from winning to making each other laugh. I call this the dancing mongoose. I jogged up the lane and threw the ball straight into the gutter. We all laughed like hyenas and just couldn't stop. We officially have a case of the sillies, I announced to my mother, who was giving a disapproving grin. Adele went next. This is called the bus. Adele ran up the alley shouting, beep, beep. Adele, easy, her mother warned. Yeah, guys, be cool. You don't want to hurt our breaths, Scarlett said. She watched way too many 80s high school movies where everyone was trying to be cool and popular. We would come back every week and just have a great time. We didn't take bowling seriously, at all. Each week, we just got sillier and sillier until the target of our game turned into hitting as few pins as possible. The other teams would stare, and Scarlett got pretty close to getting into a fight with a boy who kept calling us losers. It's about having fun, moron, Scarlett shouted. The boy rolled his hooded eyes. It's also about winning. We didn't know what he meant and just called him Huey. At the end of the summer, we found out exactly what he meant. There was a big pizza party and trophies. We didn't know there were going to be trophies. Apparently, the other kids did, and we came in last place, but we still got a trophy, the smallest one there. I comforted my friends. We didn't do so bad. I always was one to look on the bright side. Plus, my father told me that I had to say that. But really, it was okay that we didn't win. We had more fun than any of the other teams there. We played for the experience and not the award. I have dozens of trophies in cardboard boxes from various competitions, and they just sit there. They don't mean much, but the photo of Adele, Scarlett, and me in our USA Flowers t-shirts hangs proudly over my desk. I smile and laugh every time I think back to those fun memories. The good times mean more than some shiny award that would have just collected dust. And now, this is a letter to a teddy bear. My grandparents bought me a big peach teddy bear named Dearest for my 10th birthday, and she quickly became one of my most meaningful stuffed animals out of the hundreds that I owned. Dear Dearest, when I look at you, I just picture my great-grandmother Mima holding you in her hospital bed. I think that's why you sit next to my bed now. You remind me of Mima. With your blank stare and plain color, you really shouldn't have stood out from all the other stuffed animals, but Mima made you special, and that's why you're one of my favorites. You don't need to be extraordinary to be special. That is why I write. That leads us into a story called Only in Dreams. Watch your head, Meme, Dad said as Mom, and me piled into the back seat of my dad's tan Lincoln Continental parked on the hospital lot. Lee, you worry too much. I'm fine. Mom smiled at me before turning back to Dad and insisting, I'm no invalid, you know. She was always making her wisecracks. No one would have believed that this spunky lady was 83. Mom had been in the hospital for 3 months with colon cancer and had just been released. She put her seatbelt on and we took off. I looked at her, so excited that she was finally coming home to live with us. We converted our TV room into a nice burgundy bedroom for her. I added a glitter-filled welcome home sign and balloons and just knew she was going to flip when she saw what I made for her. Can we stop to get something to eat first? I'm starving, Mom roared. That was refreshing and something we hadn't heard in a long time. Mom's cancer always made her nauseous, so she lacked an appetite and rarely ate. We pulled into the diner parking lot where Mom waitressed when she was young. As we walked in, Mom smiled at me. Morissa, my angel, she whispered as she patted my head. We sat down and didn't even need to look at the menu. We'd all be having our usual, well-done hamburgers with potato chips instead of fries. While we waited for the server to bring out our food, Mom leaned over to me. Marissa, why don't you sing something while we wait, she nudged. I laughed. Me, Mom? Come on, I haven't heard you sing in so long. I just sang for you yesterday in the hospital. Mom looked at her polished elbow nails. But that was in the hospital. Come on, sing somewhere over the rainbow. My parents gestured with me to sing, so I did. The waitress came over and listened as well, and the diners around us clapped when I finished. Mimam's eyes filled with tears. You're the best singer in the world. She hugged me and looked over my shoulder at my mother. Look at your daughter. I'm so proud of you. Our food came out in under 20 minutes, cooked to perfection. Mimam gave me her coleslaw. I tried to give her my lettuce, but she insisted I eat my veggies. Towards the end of the meal, she looked uncomfortable. Everything okay, Mim? Is it your stomach? My dad asked. Mimam chuckled. Oh no, Lee, I'm fine. She was a toughie, never admitting when she was sick or in pain. After our meal, we headed home. When we pulled up to the house, Mimam gasped at the sight of balloons on the front porch. Are those for me? She asked my mother, the little girl in her coming out. Yes, and so are the flowers. My mother handed Mimam a bouquet of white orchids that she had hidden in the trunk. Mimam's eyes filled with tears again, but she never actually cried. I never saw her cry, even in her most emotional times. She was too strong to let me see that side of her. We showed Mimam to her room. She danced around and looked at the welcome sign. I love it. Mimam took a seat on the royal blue Queen Anne chair. Then I reintroduced her to each of my favorite stuffed animals, all 16 of them. Mimam was always playing with my stuffed animals with me. It was perfect, just like old times. We played and played for hours. Then Mimam looked at her watch. It's 10 o'clock. Mim, come on. Can you tell me the bear story, please? Mimam deviously smiled. Oh, all right. She pondered for a moment about where to start as I snuggled next to her on the room couch in the corner of the room. When I was your mom's age, I went camping in Colorado with Aunt Grace and Uncle Johnny, Mimam began. She was the best storyteller. She'd speak slowly with emphasis on the important parts of the story. Plus, she made sound effects and did voices. She continued, one day, we were having a picnic when a big bear came along. A grizzly? I asked dramatically. Are those big brown ones? Yes. Mimam smiled. Then that's the kind that came over. Aunt Grace and Uncle Johnny went running for the hills. But not me. I pointed at him like this. Mimam stuck her index finger at me, and I said, hey you, come here. Mimam was such a gentle woman, but she acted so mean to make me laugh. So the bear gives me a, are you talking to me look? And I said, yeah, you, the big brown bear. Come here a second. At this point, I was laughing uncontrollably. So the bear comes over, and I give him a sandwich. A knuckle sandwich, I interrupted? No, a real turkey sandwich. We were picnicking after all, and we had plenty of food to share. Anyway, the bear scarfs the sandwich down. Then he wants another, and another. Finally, I run out of sandwiches, and the bear becomes furious. Aunt Grace and Uncle Johnny get in the car, and they take off. There's just one problem. Mimam paused and looked at me. The bear was following us. Finally, I find a few crackers in my purse, roll down the window, give them to him, and I swear he thanked me with his eyes. The end. And? I prodded. And what? What about the rest of the story? I asked. That is the end. I was not going to give up that easily. No, what about the letter? Well, you know the letter part is make-believe, Mimam said. Every other part of that story is more real than life itself. I still want to hear it, I demanded. Okay, fine, Mimam sighed. So about 10 years later, I get this letter in the mail. It's from someone named Bob. Now, I didn't know anyone named Bob, so I was very curious. I opened the letter, and guess who Bob was? The bear. No, silly, Bob was a car insurance salesman who wanted me to switch plans, Mimam joked. Mimam, that is not how the story goes. Okay, so Bob the bear and I became pen pals, because when I gave him crackers, I also slipped him my address. So Bob wrote to me about his journeys through Colorado, and I write back, Mimam said through labored breaths. She looked exhausted. Mimam, are you okay? I asked. She was holding her lower back as she nodded. Suddenly, I watched as a moccasin feather popped out of her back. It sparkled and fluttered as another one grew next to it, then another, and another, until I was looking at the most beautiful dove-like wings I'd ever seen. They became clearer the longer I looked at them under the bright lamplight of the dark burgundy room. She flapped her new extensions as I watched her lake blue eyes, stunned and speechless. Then I heard crying, and suddenly Mimam was gone. I woke up in our living room and looked at my mother, who was sobbing by the fireplace with my father consoling her. I can't believe she's gone. He said 2 more years. She was going to live with us, Mom laughed. That's when reality set in and the memories came flooding back. It was all a dream. Mimam didn't make it home with us. She died of colon cancer in the hospital on St. Patrick's Day after 3 months of being in the hospital. The day she died, I didn't want to accept that she was gone, so I just kept escaping to that place where she was playing with me and my toys and telling her stories again. I imagined Mimam home with us, where we were all laughing instead of crying. My little angel, Mimam whispered in my ear. And I think that the thing with a story like that, everybody can relate to that too, because we all have that figure in our lives who, I knew me mom until I was 10. You have a figure in your life who impacts you for so many years, and they just make a lasting impression on you. So this is my letter to me mom. Me mom had 11 siblings and took care of her mother for much of her life. She was an excellent cook. Dear me mom, I may have only known you for 10 years, but you made a lasting impact on me. You taught me about compassion. I learned the meaning of selflessness from you. I always have and always will look up to you. You encourage my talents and passions. Whenever I'd see you, I'd perform talent shows for you in the living room. I'd sing and dance while you scored my performances. I used to get frustrated with you because you would give every performance a perfect score. You explained that to you, they were perfect, every single one of them. Your positive reinforcement really encouraged me, even to this day. Without it, I might not have had the confidence or drive to get in front of people to sing, speak, or dance. I heard so many stories about you and how you were a hard-working lady. You'd work in the diner or factories by day and take care of your siblings, daughters, and mother by night. Even towards the end of your life, when you were ill with cancer, you were sure to cook your famous stuffed cabbage for your family, play hide and seek with me, and talk for hours with those you loved. Sometimes I can't help but wonder if you were superhuman, a real angel on earth. You're always with me, that is why I write. And this is another letter to somebody who's no longer with us, but who, again, left a lasting impact. I met Magnus one time in the oncology ward of St. Thomas's Hospital. She wore a fairy costume and a rose tutu. Dear Magnus, when they told me I needed to see a pediatric oncologist, I didn't know what that meant. Then I saw you and realized exactly what an oncologist was. A cancer doctor. A cancer doctor for kids. A cancer doctor for kids like you. At first, I was so scared when I saw you. You were bald with dark circles under your rheumy eyes and a needle with an IV strapped to your arm. But then, I saw you smiling and laughing. I was worried that I was at the doctor's office because I had the same disease as you, but you didn't make it seem so bad. You were so happy. When I went in to see the doctor, he did some magic tricks before doing the tests on me. Then he told me I was not sick in the same way as you. I didn't have cancer. I've lived 9 years since then, and you only got to live 3 more. But you touched many lives with your positive attitude and cheerfulness. You are an incredible little girl, and although your life was short, you managed to make the world a better place. Your positivity brings hope to others. That is why I write. And as I said before, there are many different forms of writing in this. So this is the story of the transition that somebody can have between middle school and high school. That 1 year is a huge year, that 8th grade to freshman year. So this is that craziness told in the form of a zuketsu. It's called The Difference a Year Makes. 1. I sit in the back of Dad's car, bopping my head to the Beatles' Revolution, and hum quietly while reading over my notes for today's math test. 2. Lunch with Val and Eugene, Maribel, Kayla, Chris, and Nick, talking about our favorite movie, Forrest Gump, until Val interrupts with how nervous she is about applying to high school. We finish lunch in silence. 3. Let fx equal negative 2x squared plus 4x plus 6. That is the question that's plagued me all day. On my math test, I made the answer positive instead of negative. The minor mistake will cost me my A. 4. On this beautiful, unseasonably warm afternoon, I'm glad to be reading my favorite Matheson stories on a wooden cutout from the giant oak by the dining room window, but worries that I may not be accepted to the academy interrupt my leisure. 5. For Christmas, my friends and I exchange gifts. Val gives me a stuffed flamingo. I put it right next to the unicorn on the lace-covered doeskin bench that oversees my room. 6. We have received your application for admission testing to the Academy for Allied Health and Biomedical Sciences. Your test will be on January 28, 2008. 7. In gym class, Val holds her hand as if she's in pain, but she refuses to show it to anyone, not even me, her best friend. 8. Val has a circular scar on her hand that looks like a burn mark. She insists that she's just clumsy and fell. 9. This kid next to me at the Academy admission testing is breathing so loudly I can't concentrate. 10. I glide my paintbrush through the keratin paint and onto the canvas. I don't know what I'm painting, but I know I need to paint. 11. Math class is miserable. Not only did I get an 86 on the test that I thought I aced, but Val started crying hysterically until Miss Endoff sent her to the school counselor. 12. Maribel and Kayla are mad at Val for acting so strangely. They refuse to speak to our friend. I refuse to join their charade. I know she's acting strangely for a reason. 13. I come home to find my mother crying. Happy tears. She tells me that I passed my admission test with a proud ear-to-ear grin on her face. The next step in the admission process is an interview with the Academy on March 1st. 14. I beat a few bracelets before going to sleep. I feel guilty, like I should be studying or preparing for my interview, but I just don't want to. 15. Val pulls me into the coat cubby during homework. The dark circles under her eyes are barely visible from the faint light in the dimly lit room. She tells me how her father has abused her and her sisters this past year and swears me secrecy. 16. How can I help my best friend and her sisters? Can I help my best friend and her sisters? Can I help my best friend? 17. I go to the veterans home where I've been volunteering for years to see my favorite veteran, Roger. He tells me not to get old. 18. Why do you want to go to the academy, Miss Fender, my academy interviewer asks. I stare at her blankly for a moment before responding. 19. When Val comes to school with more bruises, I break my promise to tell my parents. 20. I slowly open my report card to reveal a B in math. My first B ever. I take a puff of my inhaler. 21. The old home phone rings. I assume it will be the academy with an admission decision. Help me, Morissa! Val screams into the phone. I gesture to my mother, who grabs the car keys as we race for the door. 22. Spring break. My family and I go to Hershey Park in Pennsylvania to celebrate by being one of 40 students admitted to the academy. 23. Dice goes to Val's house after her older sister tries to commit suicide by overdosing on pain pills. 24. Lunch is so quiet with Eugene, Maribel, Caleb, Chris, and Nick. 25. I got an 84 on my math test today. I smiled. 26. Val returns to school but sits at a different lunch table. She has no more bruises, but her eyes are still red. 27. My gown flows as I march down the church aisle to receive my certificate of completion from St. Francis School. 28. I stare at the screen of my new HP computer as I scratch the background for the $15 iTunes card my grandparents gifted to me. As I begin to type in OK Goes, Here It Goes Again as the first song I purchased, I change my mind and type in The Beatles' Revolution. 29. I relax outside, alternating between reading Stephen King and beating on my twirling chair as I now do every relaxing summer day. 30. Went to the store on a giant dandelion bead stuffed animal. I am the skee-ball champ. 31. This is so embarrassing. I don't know how to open my locker. In all my years of private school, homeschool, and Catholic school, I've never had a locker until entering the academy. Mrs. Brown laughs as she teaches me how to operate a locker. 32. Holding a brain is a lot different than I thought it would be. It's mushier and lighter than I imagined. 33. Ever see Forrest Gump? My new friend Lucille asks at lunch as I mush the jelly on my sandwich. 34. I walk down the street pulling my Shih Tzu Maltese in my wagon. Lester almost jumps out when he sees a terrier twice his size, but I catch him just in time. It's the scariest moment I've had in a long time. 35. At the Veterans Home, I see Roger and tell him how much I love the academy. He smiles and asks if I'd like to sing with him. 36. The phone rings. It's my new friend Shannon. She needs help with her biomedical sciences homework. 37. I spent Columbus Day at my parents' carpet store. St. Francis never gave us days off for those made-up holidays. 38. Solve for x in the equation ln x equals 8. I haven't been able to get that problem out of my head all day. That is the problem that earned me the Best in Class award on my first Merkin Curie report card. 39. It's Sunday. I walk down Main Street to pick up bagels for my family. The smiley, bright-eyed girl behind the counter at the bagel shop is Val. She's a student at Mother Superior High School. She asks if my unicorn is being nice to my flamingo. 40. I look at the flamingo and unicorn on my bench. They're fine. I'm okay. Everybody's all right. Everything is good. And most of my letters, 90% of the letters are to humans, probably 99% of the letters are to humans, but this is another letter to a non-human. My parents bought Bonnie and Clyde lovebirds at a flea market before I was born. Bonnie died when I was a toddler, but Clyde lived through my teen years. Dear Clyde, oh my little lovebird, when Bonnie died, we thought that you would die of a broken heart. You didn't. You chirped more. You sure did chirp a lot. A little too much, I thought. I yelled at you to stop, and I'm really sorry for that. You were a bird, and that's what birds do. Sing your song. That is why I write. And to finish this, I have one more short story. This is the last thing to make. It's called So Cute. As a toddler, complete strangers would stop and make an enormous fuss about how adorable I was. in food stores, malls, on the street, anywhere. Now, this is not surprising. People love little kids and give them lots of attention for being cute. But strangers grabbing my cheeks, pulling my pigtails, or just plain talking to me sometimes felt like such a nuisance. Being a little kid is like being a celebrity. People just approach you with no regard for your privacy. I had a real love-hate relationship with all this attention. As a girl who enjoyed being in the spotlight, I loved it. They were my adoring fans, basking in my charming qualities. But another part of me felt like Beyonce, being approached for an autograph during dinner, and I hated it. And that is when I began to rebel. When someone would smile at me and say in his or her patronizingly cutesy voice, "Aw, she's so adorable," I would make the face. When I knew my mother wasn't looking, I scrunched up my face to make it look really ugly. I would try to transform it in a way that was so appalling, there was no way anybody could get away with calling me cute. They would look like an idiot if they did. So the layperson, this would sound like a prime example of bratty behavior. Besides, I do fit every stereotype of a brat being a spoiled only child. But I was no brat. I just loved seeing people's reactions to this disgusting face. Some people would pretend that they didn't notice the face and would continue on with their goofy smiles. In their defense, they may have thought I was mentally challenged. But others would shudder or give a confused frown, and those were the reactions I loved. I soon began making faces at strangers before they even acknowledged my cuteness. Then I began experimenting with faces to me. My new lineup included one where I puff out my cheeks and arch my eyebrows. In another, I crossed my eyes and curled my lips. The reactions of these strangers were priceless. They weren't exactly calling me cute now. Well, in the grocery store, I saw this old lady who would definitely be the type to stop and tell my mother how sweet I was. Or worse, she might squeeze my cheeks and pull my pigtails. So, as I was sitting in the shopping cart and my mother and I had passed her and made the worst face I ever had, I raised my eyebrows while scrunching my forehead. I pursed my lips as my tongue hung out the side of my mouth. This was gonna be good. I couldn't wait to see the old lady's reaction. Maybe she'd scream and jump back in terror, if I was lucky. And that's when I heard the scariest exclamation as my mother shouted, "Mrs. Crown!" My heart sank as I realized that this was none other than our neighbor who lived on the next street, Mrs. Crown. I'd see her out walking her Bichon buttons about once a week. How did I not recognize her? I didn't have enough time to stop making the face before Mrs. Crown smiled and waved to my mother. Then she turned to me and said, "Hi, Morissa." I turned as red as one of the red, delicious apples she had just put in the cart. I made the sweetest little girl smile I could as fast as I could, but I knew it was too late. I was sure Mrs. Crown was going to call me out and that my mom would discover my secret. Mrs. Crown turned to my mother as my heart pounded. Would she ask my mother if I was ill? Would she tell Mom to reprimand me for my reprehensible face? What was she going to say? What would my mom say? How could I explain this without getting in trouble? "Your daughter is just delightful," Mrs. Crown said with a grin. "She's so cute." I let out a deep breath and smiled. I knew I liked Mrs. Crown. I never did find out if Mrs. Crown was covering for me or if her cataracts had gotten so bad that she didn't actually see the face. Either way, I vowed to never make the face again. It was too risky. And that was my turning point. I began to enjoy hearing people say that I was adorable and embrace it, but as karma would have it, almost as soon as I gave up making the face, I became too old for people to make a big deal about my cuteness. I missed the attention. And so that is my book, Q&A. Or thank you so much for coming.
I was just gonna. Oh, go ahead.
Yay.
What inspired you to start this book?
I took a creative nonfiction course in college, and it started with this story that we had to write about our scariest memory. And my scariest memory was my first day of Catholic school, being somebody who always went to private school. My father is Jewish, I'm half Jewish. So starting Catholic school was a pretty scary experience for me. And just writing that brought back a lot of memories. And then with all these different assignments, I was remembering a lot of stuff. And then the whole note idea came because I do cherish notes that I receive. I mean, my mom and I are constantly writing notes to each other, we always have. And I just thought, what about a book telling people how they inspire others through notes? And that's how this came about, and I just kept writing it. So.
I like that it's a kind of an autobiographical writing, but through No,
It gives you the freedom, it seems like, to write in different kinds of formats.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
The list was especially that transitional period between middle school.
Yeah, I have one of those for high school in there too, like age 16. Like, yeah.
I really loved it because it was also so succinct. It was like just little snapshots, and we got to fill in some of the what we didn't get to hear too. I thought it was very evocative.
Thank you.
Do you ever have writer's block? Like, is that a thing? Or like to write?
Yeah, I keep giant notebooks of like just stuff that I find inspiring. Like, oh, if I hear a quote that I like, I mean, I do this in class too. Like, a professor says a quote, I will write it in my notebook, and then if I'm like getting a blank, I'll just start reading through the quotes, and something will usually spur something. And I also like just kind of highlight, just keep highlighting the same things. And that really helps.
How long did it take you to, I guess, like, recall everything so much better? Like, how long did it take you to, like, from the second you put the pen to the paper and started writing to the second you finished?
Well, to write the whole book, it was like a 2-year process.
Right.
But I had like hung the notes around, so I mean, the notes are not these notes. They were like, a friend would write me a note camp, and I remember, oh yeah, that's Adele. So I would start recalling different things, and I kept notebooks of just kind of different memories. And this is creative nonfiction, so some of the stuff is a little bit more to, make it a little more interesting. Like the dream sequence, it was memories that I had with me mom. Like me mom would have me sing in restaurants, but that actually didn't happen like that. So just kind of filling in blanks and stuff too.
Have you ever, I don't even know, I assume this stuff exists, but I think of this being a format that would work as a kind of collaborative digital literature as well. I mean, I know you have a website, but the way that you're writing notes, it almost invites, I find myself thinking, oh, I have these cherished notes too, and sadly people don't write letters as much anymore, and so it's really becoming an extra special kind of communication, but to have a digital community that's actually, yeah, I mean, it really could become kind of a collaborative digital project that's inspired by what you're doing.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
Somewhat good.
Have you done a number of these readings, or is this the first one?
I did one at True University before my book came out, but this is it for right now.
Do you feel like you learn something about your work through these readings?
I do. It's much different reading it aloud. A lot of people say reading your work aloud is so much different. When you're doing the editing process, you should read your work aloud, and it's so true because I tend to speed read. So I'll miss a bunch of stuff, and like the flow, it's really important to read your work aloud. And then when you're reading it to other people and like listening for reactions and stuff, it's huge in knowing, okay, yeah, that works, that doesn't. Or when I was writing, I read it to my classmates, or I read it to my parents, or I read it to a professor, and it's hugely important to read it to others and get feedback from them and just hear how it sounds. Because we have that voice in our head when we're reading something, and my voice in my head will sound different than somebody else's. So once I actually read it aloud, it's a little bit easier.
I'm always telling my students to read their writing aloud, even if it's just academic. I mean, to hear it.
Yeah. I started out reading it to my dogs. Somebody else was home.
They're not judgmental.
Yeah.
They walked right out of the room.
I was reading it to Lester, yeah.
Do you plan on writing anything else in the near future, or?
Yeah. I always like to write. I'm always working on something. Most of it I don't actually wind up doing anything with, but yeah, always writing. I self-published a book in high school. That was a book on contests. This is the first one that I actually published with a publisher. But I wrote my first book, I was in middle school, and it was a horrible, horrible book about these girls who went to a talent show, and nothing happened with it. But just the process of writing, it's so fun. I just you could really it's so fun to write. So always writing.
Yeah. What would you say is like the hardest thing throughout the whole process that like you came across? Because I mean, like I've never written a book, obviously, so or I wouldn't even know how to go about that. So what would you say was the most difficult thing from the whole process?
Being my own worst critic. I would write something and I would go, that's complete rubbish. I'm not British, but I would say rubbish because I'm London. And I would be like, forget it, and then I would like want to throw it out. I have files on my computer of all the stuff that I threw up, that was supposed to be in the book that I didn't like, and just kind of beating yourself up and like, I don't like that. So then once you kind of get over that, like, okay, you're not writing for a Nobel Prize, just kind of, then I would say that was the hardest part. And then also worrying what's going to happen to it. Is somebody going to publish it? Will I self-publish it? Like, is it going to stay on my computer? So that also fits into the beating yourself up part.
Do you ever feel like nervous? I don't know about this whole book. If you wrote like really personal stuff, is it like a nervous feeling to put? Because like anybody in the world could end up reading it. So like to put that out there, it's not just for yourself, for your family, for you.
Yeah, that's why saying, oh, it's creative nonfiction, that helps a little bit because you can say, it's not exactly. It makes it feel a little bit more impersonal, but absolutely when you're writing something this personal. But I feel like since other people can relate to it, it becomes everybody's story. I mean, each of these things somebody can relate to. You can relate to a story to a best friend because everybody's had that best friend they could count on. You can relate to a story about a teacher who inspired you. There are plenty of those in here. Or a teacher who showed you different things. Like it's just all different things that you can relate to, which makes it everybody's story. Oh, thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you.